Happy holidays, geeks, freaks, and all those unique. I'm the ghost of Christmas past, Emcee Frodis. 'Tis the season, but we're still in the middle of a pandemic, meaning you might have some more leisure time this particular year, as you're not able to gather with your family as usual. So in light of this unconventional year, let's look at some unconventional Christmas movies.
Welcome to the party, pal!
Die Hard? For Christmas? Groundbreaking. There are other Christmas movies that are not quite Christmas movies other than Die Hard. And if we're being totally honest, Die Hard wouldn't get on my personal list anyways, because I don't really like it. Hey, everyone's allowed to have their own opinion. Maybe I need to watch it again. I've only seen it once, but it just wasn't my thing. Not a huge Bruce Willis fan unless he's being emasculated by Meryl Streep. But I already talked about that in my Halloween movie video. There are plenty of other Christmas movies we can talk about. So let's look at my top 10 Christmas movies that aren't very Christmassy. Honorable mention, Nightmare Before Christmas. I had to mention this one because I asked on Facebook if it was a Christmas movie or a Halloween movie and had a dozen replies of yes. However, Tim Burton, Henry Selick, and Danny Elfman consider it a Halloween movie, but one that's about Christmas. So there's that. I think it's up to you to decide if Jack Skellington, suffering from existential ennui due to continually celebrating Halloween and wanting to change things up by becoming Santa Claus, is a bi-holiday piece of cinema. No matter what holiday it's for, it's a delightful musical done in a vastly underappreciated medium. Even if it's about Christmas, it's still worthy of a shout-out. Number 10, Ghostbusters II. I put this one at the bottom of the list, not because of the perceived quality of it, but because it's a total cheat. It's not a movie that's set around Christmas, but one that's set around New Year's Eve. However, being that New Year's Eve is a week after Christmas, and the movie takes place over a long enough period of time that presumably Christmas happens, and you do see a little bit of Christmas flair, and you know, I'm never going to have enough movies for a New Year's list, so it's going here. This movie follows up with the Ghostbusters 5 years after defeating Gozer the Gozerian, their business ruined by multiple lawsuits and being declared frauds. They are brought back together by Dana Barrett, now the mother of Oscar, who has become the target of the ghost of tyrant Vigo the Carpathian. I admit, this movie is not as good as the original Ghostbusters. There was a certain magic to that story they've never been able to capture with a sequel. However, it's still a fun movie to watch. I actually like every Ghostbusters movie. Yes, every Ghostbusters movie. I have a specific fondness for this one because it's the first grown-up movie I remember seeing at the theaters. I clearly remember being 6 years old and getting scared as hell of the movie during the courtroom scene. Like most of the movies on this list, it's really good for all seasons due to the fact that the holiday doesn't deeply affect the plot. But it plays particularly well at this time of year, with positive emotions being the greatest weapon against Vigo. Number 9, Black Christmas. I think of all of the movies on this list, Black Christmas is the one that most fits the Christmas movie that's not about Christmas theme. First of all, it has Christmas in the title. Yet it plays almost no part in the plot of the movie, aside from a Christmas party at the very beginning. Coming out in 1974, the same year as Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Black Christmas served as an early example of the slasher genre before it reached popularity in the 80s. Based on the urban legend, The Babysitter and the Man Upstairs, this film has a sorority terrorized by a man who keeps calling them and then killing them off one by one. Now, I usually don't go for movies where a bunch of Z-list actresses are killed off. Wait, is that Margot Kidder? And Olivia Hussey? Andrea frickin' Martin? Was not expecting that. There are Christmas decorations up during this movie, but the holiday plays almost no part in the events. It's all about the killer terrorizing a bunch of sorority girls. One of the great things about this movie is how they play the killer. You never get a clear view of him. This increases his terror by making him mysterious. This was done before Jaws and was done entirely for atmospheric reasons, rather than filmmaking necessity, so bravo to the filmmakers. This movie has been remade twice, once in 2006 and once in 2019. I actually think the 2006 movie is just a straight-up Christmas movie, even if it is a Christmas horror movie. It goes to lengths to incorporate the holiday and the terror. But I also think it lacks a lot of the charm of the original, taking away all of the mystery to the killer and focusing on gore-filled deaths. I honestly haven't watched the 2019 movie. There's only so many dead sorority girls I can take at Christmas. Number 8. Basically every Shane Black movie. Shane Black is the king of Christmas movies that aren't Christmas movies. In fact, the only reason Die Hard exists as the movie everyone trots out as their favorite Christmas movie is because Lethal Weapon did it first and Joel Silver thought he would rip it off. This genre of making things explode at Christmas would continue in The Last Boy Scout, The Long Kiss Goodnight, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and Iron Man 3. So I've got to admit, the only one I've ever seen all the way through is Iron Man 3. I've tried watching the others, but they're a bit like Die Hard. They're just not movies that appeal to me. I only really get into action movies if people have superpowers. Not a judgment call, it's just not my thing. But fun trivia, Long Kiss Goodnight was filmed in my hometown. Iron Man 3 isn't looked on as one of the better MCU movies, but I think it has its merits. For my money, it's Tony at his most sympathetic. I'm actually someone who has a lot of issues with Tony, but that's going to be another video entirely. But he comes off as his most vulnerable in this movie. It was also refreshing to see someone have PTSD after the events of a superhero film. While it does have some deep flaws in the basic plot, I think the character study of Tony makes it a movie that's worth going back to if it's one of the MCU movies you've watched less than the others. Number 7. Edward Scissorhands. Remember when Johnny Depp was someone you didn't mind having a crush on? This is the story of Edward, a creature made out of a cookie-cutting machine and turned into a teenage boy, save for the scissors in place of his hands. His creator dies before he's finished, and he's left alone until he's found by Avon lady Peg Boggs. Peg brings Edward home to integrate him into her suburban community. Edward desperately wants to belong, especially when he falls in love with Peg's daughter, Kim. There's a magical feeling when you watch Edward Scissorhands. It feels like a suburban fairy tale. That makes sense, since the framing device is the story being told by an old woman to her granddaughter. This magical fairy tale feeling, and the iconic ice dance sequence, gives this movie something of a holiday flavor. But what this movie is about is a gothic outcast trying to fit into normal society and doing a poor job of it. So really, your typical Tim Burton movie. You can actually see both sides of Tim Burton's style, the dark macabre and the overly processed, almost bubblegum fantastic. Edward Scissorhands was early in Burton's career and was a defining moment. It has so many cliches of Tim Burton movies, but before they were cliches. They're some of the best examples, which is probably why he keeps reusing them over and over again. Number 6. The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. It's Christmas! There has to be something a little Jesus-y on here, even if it is furry fantasy world Jesus. The adaptation of the book by the same name, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, is the tale of 4 siblings, Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy, who are evacuated to the English countryside during the Blitz. While playing hide-and-seek, Lucy hides in a large wardrobe and ends up in the land of Narnia, which has been enchanted by the White Witch Jadis to be always winter but never Christmas. When it comes to fantasy movies that aren't Christmas movies but sort of feel like it, I feel like the Harry Potter movies get named a lot. This is because there's usually a prominent Christmas scene in them. I don't count them myself because they comprise an entire school year. However, this movie is a fantasy movie which definitely has an element of Christmas but isn't about Christmas itself. However, it is the arrival of Father Christmas that heralds the imminent end of Jadis' spell. And this is badass Father Christmas, giving kids weapons. Yeah! I always thought it was a shame they didn't do the rest of the Chronicles of Narnia, with only Prince Caspian being finished before the child actors aged out of the roles. To be honest, doing the second one makes it more jarring. I think you could have gotten away with just doing The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but by throwing in Prince Caspian, the series feels incomplete. But the movie is pretty faithful to the original book. The child actors do a decent job. The visuals are stunning. James McAvoy as a fawn can give you really confusing feelings. Really confusing feelings. Sorry, what was I saying? atmospherically, it works well as a Christmas movie. And maybe this year, if you're good, Father Christmas will give you a bow and arrow rather than stockings and lipstick. Number 5, The Lion in Winter. When I was in 7th grade, I did a history report on Eleanor of Aquitaine, and it was mostly made up of quotes from this movie, which just goes to show you how weird a kid I was. Based on the life of Eleanor, the Queen Consort of England, the year is 1183. After trying to incite her children to revolt against their father, King Henry II, Henry imprisons Eleanor and only lets her out for Christmas, where the family has a tense reunion filled with verbal sparring, revelations of affairs, and attempts of war. You know, I take it back. This is the perfect Christmas movie. I honestly don't know if any movie encapsulates the holiday better. However, I'm going to talk about this movie anyways, because it's one of my favorites. It should be appreciated more, and when else am I going to have the chance to talk about it? Part of my personal interest in it is the subject matter. As you can guess by me doing a report on Eleanor, I've always had a deep interest in the Plantagenets. I think it's a fascinating subject. For anyone out there who's a fan of Robin Hood myth, I suggest you look into the Plantagenets, as they were major players during that time period. But in regards to this movie, it's basically just a masterclass in acting. It's acting the movie. You have powerhouses such as Katharine Hepburn, Peter O'Toole, and Anthony Hopkins in the main roles. O'Toole would be nominated for an Oscar for his role as Henry, while Hepburn would win her 3rd Best Actress award for playing Eleanor. It would also win Best Adapted Screenplay. These particular lines are incredible and are delivered by incredible actors. It's also just nice to know that awkward family get-togethers have existed since the Middle Ages. Number 4, Gremlins. You know, I have some pretty dark crap on this list. If I were to guess why, it's probably that filmmakers like to contrast a dark plot to the light and comforting aesthetic of Christmas. In this dark comedy, Billy Peltzer receives a mysterious creature called a mogwai for Christmas. He's given 3 instructions never to break. Do not get it wet, do not feed it after midnight, and do not expose it to sunlight. He names the mogwai Gizmo and breaks the first rule, causing Gizmo to reproduce 5 more of his species. These 5 trick Billy into breaking the second rule, and they morph into the horrific reptilian Gremlins. The Gremlins rampage through the town, killing those in their path. It's up to Billy, his girlfriend Kate, and Gizmo to stop them. When I was a kid, I preferred Gremlins to the new batch. That's probably because that one was a lot more cartoonish in nature. But going back and rewatching them, I've developed a deep appreciation for this one. It strikes a great balance in horror and comedy, making it a bit more fun to watch than something like Black Christmas, but still on the darker side of things. While the main story of the Gremlins terrorizing people is pretty much an evergreen plot, it's firmly established as being part of the Christmas season, with Gizmo being a gift for Billy, and Kate's absolutely iconic story about why she hates Christmas. And who can resist Gizmo? He's just so freaking cute. Number 3. Trading Places. Oh, thank goodness. A straight-up comedy. Things were starting to get a little heavy around here. Oh, wait. This movie involves ruining people's lives for a bet? Groovy. But it does feature 2 of the greatest comedians of the modern day in their prime and a complex and witty plot. The Duke brothers, commodity brokers in Philadelphia, have a debate on nature versus nurture. They make a bet and decide to prove which one is right by ruining the life of one of their employees, the rich Louis Winthrop III, while elevating a poor conman named Billy Ray Valentine. The plot is such that it could take place at any time of year. Of course, then we'd lose this scene, which would be tragic because it's hilarious. And also, ew. This is a well-constructed movie with a whole section on Wikipedia dedicated to explaining the ending because it's so complicated. It's absolutely made by Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy. They're hilarious both separately and together. Add in Jamie Lee Curtis, who is just as funny and sassy, and, well, for a lot of people at the time, it was very informative. Jamie Lee Curtis's brief topless scene is still considered one of the most paused moments of all time. You know, I don't know how people come up with those numbers, but hey, who am I to judge? It was the early 80s, not everything was on VHS, and Jamie Lee Curtis did look absolutely bangin'. This movie might seem a bit dated now, reflecting a lot of the attitudes of the 80s, but it's still a lot of fun, and I'm kind of glad to have something on here that doesn't involve death. Number 2, Batman Returns. Wait a second. Nightmare Before Christmas, Edward Scissorhands, Batman Returns. Is Tim Burton secretly after Shane Black's crown for stealth Christmas movies? The second comic book movie on this list, and my personal favorite, the setting of Christmas adds to the gothic look of this film. As everything is blanketed in snow, you have sharp contrast with all of these black-clad figures. Gotham City is being terrorized by the Red Triangle Gang, a group of circus performers turned criminals, led by the mysterious Penguin. Penguin is working with Max Schreck, a corrupt business executive he's blackmailing. Schreck wants to use Penguin to replace the mayor, who's blocking his power plant. When Schreck's secretary, Selina, finds out the truth about the power plant, he attempts to kill her, but instead makes Selina become Catwoman. I have so many feelings about this movie. I don't know if there's a single moment that can encapsulate all of them. Yeah, actually, that does it really well. When I was a kid, I had this gigantic poster of Catwoman on my wall. I was like, she's so badass and just so cool. I was about 4 years and 2 redheads away from figuring out the real reason I liked her so much. Not that she's not badass. She's absolutely amazing. The chemistry between her and Michael Keaton is electrifying, and you really understand how they're two halves of the same whole. Danny DeVito made the Penguin terrifying. But while you've got these costumed villains, the real bad guy is Max Schreck. And do I need to say anything other than he's Christopher Walken? Like Edward Scissorhands, this movie plays on one of Tim Burton's favorite tropes, outsiders. The setting of Christmas isn't necessary, but without it, we wouldn't have...
Mistletoe can be deadly if you eat it.
But a kiss can be even deadlier if you mean it.
And number 1, It's a Wonderful Life. Surprise! One of the most famous Christmas movies of all time actually doesn't have a lot to do with Christmas. On Christmas Eve, Angel's second class, Clarence Oddbody, is told the history of George Bailey. He's a hardworking and loyal man from Bedford Falls who has big dreams to go exploring and become an architect. Due to circumstances beyond his control, he's remained in his hometown his entire life. After his building and loan loses $8,000 and George's rival Mr. Potter threatens him with a scandal, George contemplates suicide. Clarence descends from heaven to show George what his life would be if he were never born. Y'all know the story, even if you've never seen the movie. It's a Wonderful Life is second only to A Christmas Carol in terms of being homaged. If you really look at the movie, Christmas is really only used as a backdrop. The whole first half of the movie is setting up George's history, none of which has to do with Christmas. The present-day story is set at Christmas, but doesn't heavily incorporate the holiday. It simply serves as a backdrop to a story about a man finding out his worth, and that no man is a failure who has friends. The Christmas setting of the story comes from its origin. The movie is based on the short story The Greatest Gift by Philip Van Doren Stern. It was originally self-published and given out as presents to Stern's friends. Setting it at Christmas makes sense for something that's given out as a Christmas gift. And while people can come together to help someone else at any time, it's something that's particularly heartwarming at Christmas. Maybe that's why this has become such an indelible Christmas classic, because the idea of someone realizing how important they are to a community and how much people love them is something we really want this time of year. It might not be directly to do with Christmas, but what is a Christmas movie anyways? We can look at something like The Santa Claus and Elf and say, yes, this is a Christmas movie. But that's not everybody's Christmas. The experience of Christmas is different for everyone. Not everybody wants to be strangled by garland and drenched in eggnog. Some people want reptilian creatures that are wreaking havoc, or kids fighting against a witch's army. Or they want to see an outsider try to find where they belong. These movies are all perfectly worthy of being called Christmas movies, because they're movies that use the holiday as a setting, in whatever way that may be. Because there's not one way to celebrate Christmas, so there should not be one specific type of Christmas movie. Whatever movie you decide to watch, please be safe and respect the guidelines of the area you're in. If you can't get together with somebody in person, use Group Watch online to connect with one of your friends and watch one of these movies. Comment down below to tell me your favorite. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel. I do lots of videos on pop culture, Star Wars, Star Trek, Doctor Who, etc. If you'd like to support me, you can go to my Patreon. You can also buy me a coffee. You can also go to my Redbubble or TeePublic to buy some of my geeky graphic designs. But most importantly, have a wonderful holiday, live long, and may the Force be with you.